even more so because Nigeria's military independence came much later than political independence. For the first 5 years of civilian self-rule, up until 9th February 1965, the Nigerian army was still being run by Britain. Not only were the soldiers are militarily inexperienced, they were young compared to their political counterparts. General Gowon, the most senior figure in the army and the head of state, was a merely 35 years of age. The army, having been so hurriedly put together and with so little exposure to the sovereign discipline of combat, their experience typically being limited to United Nations peacekeeping missions in Congo, and with low educational attainment, were the least equipped institution for the challenge of rebuilding the broken mega states. The charade of Nigeria, hang on, there's something about my camera position. It shouldn't be that down, but so down. It should be a little bit up. Sorry about that. Yeah, it should be properly up. Try it this way. So let's continue. The charade of Nigeria as a nation, having been so brutally exposed by the bloodletting of pogroms and by the Biafra War, the only bonding agent that remained with which to build some sense of common purpose was the opportunity of financial patronage, that is, corruption. The oil boom of the 1970s came just in time to restore hope in the waning Nigerian projects. The trigger for the boom was a new round in the Arab-Israeli wars in 1973, with Syria and Egypt receiving weapons supply from the Soviet Union. The USA moved to supply weapons to Israel. The war quickly turned into a global economic war when, on the 17th October 1973, the Organization of Arab Oil Exporting Countries, OPEC, imposed an oil embargo against the US and several other industrialized countries. By the time the embargo was finally lifted in March 1974, world oil prices had quadrupled from $3 a barrel to $12 a barrel. This suddenly transformed Nigeria into an oil-rich state. With the Biafran War over and infrastructure needing to be rebuilt, the country's newfound oil wealth first masked, before then exposing the limited competence of the young soldier rulers. With the country now awash with oil revenues, Gowon, the northern Christian, had served his purpose as the acceptable face of northern rule. His removal from power on 29 July 1975 by Muritala Muhammad was achieved by exploiting popular disenchantment over the announcement of a delay to the return to civilian rule scheduled for 1976. Unlike Ojukwu, who after the coup of January 1966 had refused to be subordinated to Gowon, his junior in rank, just because he was a northerner, Obasanjo, although senior to Muhammad by age and rank, accepted to serve as his second in command. This act of deference cleared the way for Muhammad to be sworn in as head of state. Nigeria was back where it had been when the British left, under Fulani northern rule, but now with a military structure under a military regime. Muritala Muhammad, a Fulani native of Kano, Muhammad had attended Barewa College before joining the Nigerian Army in 1958 and attending Sandust for his officer training. He had been at the center of all the key political ructions in Nigeria, from his leading role in the bloody counter-coup of January 1966, his service as aide-de-camp to the military administrator in the Western region during the 1962 crisis, down to his ignominious role in the massacre of civilians, including women and children in Asaba during the Biafran War. While the earlier coup of January and July 1966 had represented fundamental changes in the political matrix, The driving force for the coup, which brought Muritala to power, was more about the man at the top. Gowon had enjoyed nearly 10 years in power, and Muritala wanted his turn on the grand stage. Perhaps because his tenure was so short, it was possible to put an enduring gloss on his blood-soaked past. As it happened, the delay timetable for the return to civilian rule, which he had used to justify Gowon's removal, was in fact extended further by a new regime when on 1st October 1975, it announced a new date of 1st October 1979, the announcement of an anti-corruption program and a plan to create 7 new states, coupled with the promise of a new constitution for the country, was sufficient to buy the customary early popularity for the new regime. The real boost to his popularity came from a new radicalism in external affairs, which was clearly demonstrated in Nigeria's role in the struggle for Angola independence. When in November 1975, South African forces, with American CIA backing, intervened in the war against the People Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, the Muritala Muhammad regime, in a departure from the position taken by the OAU and in defiance of US wishes, decided to assert its independence by giving formal recognition to the MPLA regime. The move ensured the withdrawal of the South African forces in December 1975, but at great cost to Muritala Muhammad himself. He was assassinated in Lagos on 13th February 1976 in what was reported to be an attempted coup with a count of 199 days in office. Muritala had ruled for only 6 days. He had only ruled for 5 days longer than Nursi, right? So he only lasted 5 days longer than Nursi. So the leader of the attempted coup, Colonel Bukasuka Dimka, was a Christian from Gowon's ethnic group, and it was suggested that Gowon was behind the plot to take back power, having been in nearby Togo at the time. With Ojukwu already in exile in Ivory Coast, Gowon's subsequent exile to Britain meant the military leaders from both sides of the Biafran War were now exiled from Nigeria. Wow. Once more, give me another sec. I think my world of view shouldn't be that far away. I should be at the center. I think that's better. Anyway, thank you. So let's continue. So the two of them were now in exile. Once more, a popular northern leader had been killed in a coup at the hands of a Christian. At the hand of a Christian, the prospect of power passing down to his deputy, a southern Christian, was viewed with concern in many quarters, not least by the man himself, Obasanjo. For this reason, he went to great lengths to deny interest in the succession. For their part, the Northerners were sensitive to a situation where another Northerners would succeed a Northern Muslim, who had himself succeeded a Northern Christian. Thus, despite his protests, everything pointed to Obasanjo, the Southern Christian, as the man for the job. Olusegun Obasanjo now. Obasanjo's Owu people were one of the Yoruba tribes that were once militarily powerful before they were conquered in the Yoruba Civil War of the mid-19th century. Power had subsequently shifted to their neighbors, the Egba. Born to a man who, having failed as a farmer, then failed as a father by abandoning his young family while Obasanjo was in his teens, the young Obasanjo found refuge from poverty in the colonial army in Nigeria. Plain good fortune does not adequately explain Obasanjo's career. A better explanation can be found in the meaning of his rather uncommon Yoruba surname, Obasanjo. This, the ruler rewards the faithful servant. He had joined the army in 1958 as an officer cadet at the age of 21, alongside Benjamin Adekunle, just as the army was embarking upon its Nigerianization drive, and attended months in Aldershot. Unlike Adekunle, he failed to win selection for further training at Sandhurst. However, it was to be a recurring theme of Obasanjo's life to ultimately trump his betters in the power game, in the process often reaping from ground which they had ploughed. Thus, while it was Adekunle who had the command of the 3rd Marine Commando Division that had spearheaded the federal assault on Igbo land in the Biafran War, it was Obasanjo who, in May 1969, was appointed to replace him to carry out Operation Finishing Touch to end the war and receive the laurels of the Biafran surrender. Similarly, while the academically brilliant Awolowo made 3 unsuccessful bids to become president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, who never went to university, ruled the country 3 times in all. Also, while it was Moshood Abiola who would later make the breakthrough to win a presidential election, it was Obasanjo who would harvest the mandate. Although there had been officers from the South who were more senior in rank than Obasanjo, Muritala Muhammad had retired all of them, supposedly in a purge of possible threats to his regime. In this way, Obasanjo became the most senior officer from the South when he was appointed Chief of Staff, Army Headquarters. It was the least that Muhammad could do as payback for Obasanjo stepping aside for him. In all, Obasanjo played his part of the reluctant heir to power skillfully. He spared no effort in eulogizing the memory of Muritala Muhammad. The Lagos International Airport in Ikeja was named after him, and he adhered faithfully to Muhammad's policies and programs. So much so that under Obasanjo's rule, the North achieved several key strategic objectives. The land ownership rules prevailing in the North were extended to the South by the Land Use Decree, which was passed into law in 1978. The decree had the effect of vesting the ownership of all land and mineral resources contained within the land in the states. Contracts for the construction of a steel mill in Ajaokuta, Kogi State, were signed. In addition, the decree to establish a new federal capital in Abuja, which had been passed in the last days of Muritala Muhammad's regime, on 4th February 1976, was promulgated. The big challenge remained the constitutional arrangement to restart the democracy game. So, banishing tribalism. In the thinking of the soldiers and their advisors, the collapse of the First Republic had been due to the tribalism of the political class. The solution was for the men of the armed forces, as the tribalized Nigerians, to draw up a constitution and a political order that would banish tribalism forever. In this thinking, the soldiers conveniently overlooked the fact that it was the slaughter of Igbo soldiers by fellow soldiers from the North within shared barracks, which had led to full-blown inter-ethnic warfare, resulting in the death of millions. One of the other perceived mistakes was said to be the system of parliamentary government, in which a government team was directly shadowed by an official opposition team, with weekly parliamentary confrontations between the prime minister and the leader of the opposition, and in which the executive was made up of elected representatives of the people. In its place, a system broadly modeled upon the US presidential system of government was introduced. The result was a poor imitation, which lost sight of the importance feature of American federalism. The draftmen failed to appreciate or more likely, close their minds to the balance of power between the arms of government, which serves as a guard against federal excesses. Right. They also ignore the fact that the daily encounters under the parliamentary system between the cabinet and the official opposition served as a similar check on the excesses of the executive. This blind spot meant that the presidential system, which the Obasanjo regime introduced, bore a close resemblance to military and colonial rule, with the only difference being the requirement for the president to renew his mandate every 4 years. A system of governance providing for such limited accountability paved the way for the reign of corruption. The Constitution Drafting Committee came up with several prescriptions towards the abolition of tribalism. There was the National Youth Service Corps, under which young graduates were required to spend a year following their graduation working in a part of the country other than their state of origin. The thinking was that by emulating the practice within the armed forces, wherein soldiers were posted to serve in different parts of the country, this would make civilians detribalized like the soldiers. Also, there was the principle of federal character, under which public bodies were required to observe a policy of equal representation between the ethnic groups in appointments. Biafra had been possible because there was a strong Igbo identity. It failed because not all the eastern region were Igbos. In the aftermath of the Biafran defeat and surrender, the Obasanjo regime could be confident that the threat to the One Nigeria project from the east had been dealt with. The concern now to neutralize any threat from the western region, which had always been the most homogeneous of the three regions, and following the carve-out of the Midwest states, it was now more than ever before made up of a single ethnic group, the Yorubas. The Obasanjo regime resolved to break up the Western region by creating new states to facilitate the emergence of new loyalties. As a result, what had been Western state was split into Ondo, Ogun, and Oyo states, with Lagos having already been carved out as a separate state from the old Western region, significant, measures were taken in the east and in the north. East Central State, which had been the core Igbo area, was split into Anambra and Imo states. In the north, Northeastern State became Borno, Gongola, and Bauchi states. Northwestern State became Sokoto, Niger, and Federal Capital Territory. And Benue, Plateau State, became the separate state of Benue and Plateau. In the new arrangement, there were a total of 19 states, thus reversing the parity of states between the north and south that had apparently been considered with Gowon's 12-state measure just before the war. 7 states remained unchanged except for minor boundary adjustments: Kano, Kwara, Lagos, Midwest, North Central, Rivers, and Southeastern. All 19 states were given new names without geographical links in order to erase memories of past political ties and emotional or regional attachment. Are you paying attention to how they started decoupling in their own way of trying to take away all our identity, everything, so that we will never have any audacity or any chance of saying we want to break up or we want to go our separate ways anymore? That is why when they started creating states, they started merging brothers from this part and making them minority in another part, so that you will never have a chance of forming enough to say, you know, when you say Biafra, for example, now, you will see the Igbos that were caught to be part of Benue, the Igbos that were caught to be part of, Rivers, to caught to be part of, what do you call it, Akwa Ibom, all those border towns, right, like that. All the Igbos there, they are already, most of them are already denying, they've already denied their Igbo-ness, that they are not Igbos. So it's been over 50 years now after the war, so that you understand how social conditioning or programming works over 50 years. So when they started creating all these states, They started cutting the Yorubas in Kogi. They cut them to Kogi, and they call them North Central. So you will see the Yorubas in Kogi, they will tell you they are not part of the Oduduwa nation. Because to them, they are northerners. So all of this were done systematically to prevent and possibly avoid any chance that any of us, any major ethnic group, will likely come together and say they want to live again. Obasanjo led that charge this time around. The one that lasted to this long is Obasanjo's creation. Far from all that happened before the war and all of that too. This current one is Obasanjo's creation. So that you will see the Yorubas who are also caught up into Kwara. They will tell you, no, we are not part of Yoruba nation. No. We are Nigeria. We don't trust the rest of Yorubas. And that is the same thing with other Igbos. They will tell you, we don't trust all these Igbo. We are not Igbo. We are not Igbo. We are not Igbo. We are not Igbos. We are Benue. We are not Igbo. We are Rivans. I'm just saying so that you will pay attention to how they started changing the names and why they did it. They said why they started breaking the country is simply because they wanted to make sure that we all lose our identity and start carrying this one Nigeria identity. It is the creation of Obasanjo. But let me continue. Right. Shokoto. Anyway, the most significant prescription was a requirement for political parties to be national. Obasanjo also removed like having your own political party that actually represents you. Igala People's Conference, Igala People's Party. The TV Popular Party, or the Yoruba, Egbe Omo Yoruba Progressive Party. They stopped that. You can no longer name a your political party must have national. You must go and look for northerners. If you are a southerner who want to start a political party, you must go and look for northerners to come and take position in your party before they can agree that you can start a party in Nigeria. All of that is to make sure that, but again, let's continue because of our time. This, it was thought, could be achieved by making it a condition of registration as a political party that the party should have offices in at least 2/3 of states in the federation. The stipulation only succeeded in making the process of registering parties prohibitively expensive. It failed in the central objective of avoiding tribal-based parties, as the 5 political parties which emerged through the process were, almost without exception, a reincarnation of the parties of the failed First Republic. Awolowo and his action group resurfaced with the Unity Party of Nigeria. You see that? Unity Party of Nigeria. Unity Party, Nigeria. See that? Meanwhile, it's a Yoruba party. Awolowo's party. But you have to look national. Right? As the predominantly Yoruba party. Although the Sardauna and Balewa were now deceased, their party, the NPC, returned in name as the National Party of Nigeria, Unity Party of Nigeria, National Party of Nigeria, so NPN. But in substance, as the party of the Hausa Fulani, under the leadership of Alhaji Shehu Shagari, Aminu Kano, who had been the leader of the Northern Element Progressive Union, as the voice of the Radical North, initially returned as a member of NPN before breaking away to set up his own party, the People Redemption Party, PRP. Not only did the party undermine the Hausa Fulani NPN's appeal in the Northeast, confirmed when the party won both Borno and Gongola states, but it posed the larger danger of a broad alliance against the NPN, since it contained prominent members of the old western arm of the NCNC, with Azikiwe having retired from party politics, there will be nothing to stop this Northeast with Southeast alliance further aligning with Awolowo's UPN of the Southwest. There can be but few precedents in history for one who has served as a head of state above sectional politics to return to the mire of the partisan struggle for vote as Azikiwe did. But by one means or another, Azikiwe was persuaded to return to the fray. He did so not by forming his own party, but joining the NPP. Then using his power and influence over Igbo members to get the party to adopt him as his presidential candidate in preference to Waziri Ibrahim. The move forced Ibrahim to leave with his Kanuri followers to form a new party, the Great Nigerian People's Party, GNPP. Azikiwe's late intervention had the effect of taking the country back to square one in his political journey, as he then took the now predominantly Igbo NPP into alliance with NPN again. Thus reproducing the old alliance of Northwest and East. The reward for Azikiwe and his followers was 8 positions within the new NPN NPP alliance government, Shagari's government. The 2/3 of 19 debacle. A new dimension introduced to the political arena is what can be described as a judicial electorate. As part of the measures to outlaw tribally based parties, the Constitution had stipulated that a candidate for an election to the office of president shall be deemed to have been duly elected to such office where 1, he has the highest number of votes cast, and 2, he had not less than 1/4 of the votes cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all states in the federation. When the votes were tallied, Alhaji Shehu Shagari of the NPN was credited with 5.688 million votes, with Awolowo of the UPN coming in second, 4.916 million votes, and Azikiwe coming third. Shagari had the highest number of votes cast, but the issue was whether he had met the not less than stipulation. He had unquestionably in 12 of the 19 states, but he had unquestionably in 12 of the 19 states, but in Kano, he had attained only 19.9% of the total votes cast. Awolowo and the UPN argued that not less than 2/3 of 19 states meant 13 states, so that Shagari was not entitled to be sworn in as president without a runoff election between him and Awolowo. The prospect of a head-to-head contest between Awolowo and Shagari without splintering influence of Azikiwe and others offered no attraction to the NPN. Before the Supreme Court, the NPN's elite counsel, Richard Akinjide, argued that 2/3 of 19 was 12, and 2/3 was 12, and 2/3 of that, since Shagari had won 25% of 2/3 of the votes in the 13 states, he had met the constitutional requirement. With only one dissent, the court accepted this argument, or the alternative argument that the constitutional provision had been substantially complied with without affecting the results. With this, the Second Republic was born with a heavy cloud over its legitimacy. Nothing had changed and nothing had been learnt. It was not long before the resurrected alliance of North and East fell apart once more. With no ideology binding the alliance partners, corruption became the only cause. A student collapse in oil price, A sudden collapse in the oil price saw the economy run completely out of control, and the country mired in astronomical debts. Given the desperate state of the economy, exceptional measures were going to be required to return the failed alliance to power. The Shagari government sought to curry electoral support by granting pardons to the two central characters in the Biafran War who had been in exile for different reasons, Gowon and Ojukwu. The subsequent 1983 presidential election, which was again plagued with allegations of vote rigging